So, good evening. This is the big debate that we're having today. When a filmmaker makes a film, should that film take responsibility for influencing young people and for messaging and for the morality that it's putting out? Or within the sort of framework of freedom of speech and expression that we all enjoy in this country, should filmmakers be allowed to make whatever film they want? Now, to begin with, the censor board or the board of film controls actually does a category where it says that okay, this film should only be viewed by adults, so it should only be viewed by those above the age of 12 or 16, as the case may be. We're talking about the film Animal. The censor board has decided that it should only be viewed by adults, and it's done its job. Freedom of speech and expression allows the director to make whatever he wants to make, and he has decided to make perhaps the most violent film we've seen in recent times. But there's been a lot of criticism about the glorification of misogyny, the ideas, the violence for violence sake that's in this film, and the impact that it will have on young people who tend to really mimic and sort of follow what Bollywood shows them. Which is why we're having this conversation. And we have like a really cool set of people that we put together to sort of understand what all of this means in terms of the impact on youth. To begin with, one of my favorite people, Sucharita Tyagi, is a film critic and who's sort of been very vocal about films and, you know, the portrayal of women, the portrayal of relationships towards women, the language used, and this kind of misogyny that gets glorified. So I'm very happy she's had the time to join us. KV Sridhar, or Pops, as he's commonly known for those of us in the entertainment industry, is a veteran hand at advertising and messaging with a very modern outlook on what's happening in our society. Mr. Sanjay Hegde is a senior advocate at the Supreme Court, and I'm really happy that Mr. Hegde decided to join us because there's a legal point of view here as well. Freedom of speech and expression is a fundamental right in India, and with some exceptions. So we want to understand, if everything in this film is really allowed within that framework. Nikhil Taneja is the co-founder and the chief of We Are Yuvaa. He runs this really cool show called Just Be a Man, where he talks about what it is like, to be a man, and what the expectations are in society. And a lot of this film is in that space that Nikhil deals with on his show. So he's been kind enough to join us as well. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. I'm going to start with Sanjay Hegde because I'm going to start at the jumping off point of what the law allows us. So, Mr. Hegde, a film that's gory, it's violent, it's misogynistic, it's disrespectful of women. Apparently, there is one scene where he walks into a high school because he feels his sister is being treated badly with a gun and fires it in the air just to send a message. Does freedom of speech and expression in the current framework of our law allow for this sort of thing?
Well, if freedom of speech has to mean anything, it is freedom of speech for what you do not want to hear or what you do not want to see. Popular speech requires no protection. It is unpopular speech that you dislike, but you still have to allow. And here, the framework, as far as films is concerned, is set by the censor board. The censor board looks at whatever aspects under its censorship code and then certifies films for release.
Yes.
You cannot require that the censor board also be a censor of people's morals or messages that go out on films, because then it's the thin end of the wedge. Supposing the censor board says that, this is not a proposition that the public at large should be subjected to or will accept. The censor board is not a censor of public tastes. So if a filmmaker gets his film certified by the censor board and it is exhibited in accordance with that, there ends the debate. You are, of course, free to criticize the film.
Yes.
That's also freedom of speech. You are free not to view the film. All those things come entire. You are even free to protest outside the theater as far as the film is concerned, without resorting to violence. That too is freedom of speech.
Am I also free, Mr. Hegde, approach the court saying, I find this film too violent, it should not be shown?
You you could possibly challenge the certification by the censor board, saying that, look, if the censor board had set out these particular norms and ignored them, then that's a pure administrative law question. That if you set out the law and you do not follow the law, then follow the law. But if the censor board, having applied the law, then certifies the film, then you can't say that, it does not fall within my preferred taste, or this is not how it should be allowed. Let me conclude by giving you one example. These questions did come up in The Bandit Queen. If you remember the film, there was a very violent rape of Fulan Devi, which was shown. But that was integral to the Fulan Devi story.
Yes.
And you could not have had that film or that impact without that rape scene. You saw a man's buttocks, bare buttocks, on the screen as that rape was committed. So possibly that shot could have been edited by the director, or could have been shot in another way or shown in another way. But that is the director's vision. It is the vision of the entire creative unit. And that was allowed to stand by the Supreme Court itself. So taste,
let me
can
now
differ.
take this question.
Yeah.
Let me take this question for the rest of our panel. Yes. Sucharita, I will start with you. What is the problem with the film Animal, according to you?
The problem is not the violence. The problem is not even the misogyny. The problem is not the story. The problem is not anything. The problem is the gaze, Faye. The problem is the justification of things, right? We are adults. The censor board said that this is a film for adults. Adults go and watch it. Violence is... It's not like this is the first time we've seen a human head being cut open by an axe. It's fine, that kind of stuff. Whoever wants to tell their story tells the story the way they want to tell it. And the conversation isn't about whether someone should be allowed to make a certain kind of film or should not be allowed to make a certain kind of film. We live in a free country that, like Hegde sir said, if we start going down that road, it's a slippery slope. You cannot tell filmmakers what kind of films they can or cannot make. What this conversation is about is the larger discourse around the film and the pushback criticism of the film receives. It's like there is a status quo that we must adhere to, that this is a movie star and these are big people making his big budget film. And is Faye still on the stream? I'll just take over the show. So, hey guys, welcome. This is the Sucharita Tyagi show now. Yes. So anyway, until Faye comes back, I can just carry on talking about Animal. So yeah, what I was saying to everyone who's here still, hi Faye, she's back. The question is not about whether Sandeep should be allowed to make this film, whether Ranbir should be acting in such a film. The question is about the gaze with which the film is made. And the conversation and the criticism is about what the film is propagating, what the film is forgiving of, and what the film is meant to titillate. There's always a way, you can see it in the conversations around the film before it even released. The intention with which this story has been put out in the world. So that is the larger conversation. Jisko jo film banana banao.
I would actually argue here. As kids, we watched Rambo. Our first experience with sort of a machine gun. We saw Bruce Willis say "Yippee-ki-yay!" Whatever. And then jump off a building and fire at people. Which is all we saw G.I. Joe. As young adults, we saw The Joker, which was which messed with a lot of our heads. How is that different from this? Pop, same question to you. Do you see a problem with Animal, or are you of the view that, hey, you know what, they've made a film, don't like it, don't watch it?
No, I don't have a problem because creative people are free to express, tell stories. It is no fun or no brainer if you were to not include a twist in the character. Correct? It's all about characterization. If you actually look at the film, it's a one-liner relationship between a son and a father, which is boring. Nobody would go to theaters if you actually say, the complexity of the characters and the way they've been portrayed, and that is what makes today's stories. Earlier story means a biopic. From X to Y. Today, you just take the complex characters and then you tell a small narrative. It's not a story, it's a small event, but you dramatize everything else. And then the trend of actually, lack of story, lack of insight, lack of something else in and then hiding behind too much of violence, too much of goriness.
Mm.
Correct. When it is appropriate, it's fine. As Sanjay said, uh, if it is, that is serious enough to be shown to the audience to get the story and then to get the emotions, fine. So there are two things. One, morally, and then legally they are fine. The expert have spoken. Legally nobody can do anything, but morally, every story writer, when they face with a white paper, they can write the story which they want to write. Correct. And this is what I'm a member of ASCII board. Self governance, leaving it to the creative people who are writing the stories, to their imagination and then to their own value systems. What
Mm.
kind of story you want to write, and then how do you want to narrate the story? If you look at, it started with Wasepur, but Wasepur did not have as gory details as it has today on OTT. But somewhere, the line needs to be drawn, because all the content today is all set in goriness. I have no problem. Torrentino also does films which has got violence, but it is just a competition that who can
Yeah.
do. I can chop five fingers and then bloodstream comes out of as five fountains. you know we were quite perplexed when we saw somebody chopping the head and then still blood is oozing out of that. So now it's a matter of how many organs you chop and how many streams of blood it will come out. So we used to have a horror genre completely when we were young. Whether it is
Right,
um,
right.
correct, and then you go and then see this gory thing of hands being chopped and then legs being chopped. It's fine, you're mentally prepared to do that. But there is something which we all do when we actually do something which influences millions of people, and then we think twice what you want to put and what you don't want to put.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, on that note, I just want to bring in Nikhil. Nikhil, can you tell me? Now we've talked a lot about, and Sucharita said it's the gaze, it's the messaging that we send out, it's what we glorify as acceptable behavior. When this person says, "Oh, you have the hips to bear an alpha," and
Lol.
that is why I will marry you. Or earlier the alphas would go out and hunt, and the women would look after the children, and they would just marry more alphas and have more alphas. And this whole idea. What is, from a social point of view, why is that problematic in your opinion?
I'm going to add to Sucharita's point. I feel anyone should be allowed to make any film that they want, right? Because as Sucharita said, and as Mr. Sanjay and everyone's been saying over here, the moment we start policing what films can or cannot be made, then we are in a dangerous society. In any case, there are people who file FIRs in our country against things that they don't like in movies. So you might have a Bombay Begums, which is a series where they've shown a teenager experimenting with her own sexuality, and someone filed a case against that under POSCO. And what do you say to this, right? And this is just one case. I mean, there are many such cases. So I don't think that the right way of looking at any film is to censor or to say that this can and cannot be made. Every film is valid as an expression of the filmmaker that is making it, and the story that they want to say. It is the lens that it comes comes down to. And the lens should be seen in not just the context of what the film represents, but also in the context of where we are in as a culture, where we are as a society. I put out a tweet recently that said that the difference between a film about a toxic character and a toxic film is the intent of the filmmaker. I haven't seen Animal. I mean, I don't have like, unlike Sucharita, I don't have the burden of having to watch every film as it releases, and I can choose not to watch a film that I don't think represents a kind of value system that I want to see on screen. Having said that, I know that the filmmaker himself, Sandeep Reddy, has multiple times gone, in interviews and spoken about that the fact that this film is an answer to his critics. This
Yeah.
film is made to make a point. This film is made to trigger. This film is made to be provocative. And when you are when you're showcasing something on screen just to make a point to people who don't like you, and that point is being made through misogyny, and that point is being made through excessive violence, if that point is being made through a certain value system that tries to showcase that there is a certain kind of a man that is cool to watch. It's not that the film, again, and he's playing with us, right? Like, because he's called the film Animal. So the fact is that yes, there is a film where the character in it is supposed to be animalistic. At the same time, the film also has really cool music. It has this banging background music that there's this great soundtrack that it has. Anytime that there is something problematic that is being shown on screen, it is being shown through a really cool soundtrack, which
Yeah.
almost goes on to say that you must like this
Yeah.
moment, that you must
Hmm.
almost clap at this moment, that this is not an animal moment or a villain moment, but a hero moment. And then I keep hearing from everyone who's gone on to theaters to watch this film that they were shocked, or maybe possibly unsurprised, that people are clapping when a misogynistic line is being said, or they're clapping when something terrible happens on screen, or they're laughing at it. And that's the problem with a film like this, right? It is the intent of the filmmaker. It is the lens with which this film is
Yeah.
being made,
Yeah.
and it is being done only to showcase that I can do this, and you can't do a thing about it, because if
Hmm.
you do something about it, if you complain about it, then I can point to all the, so to speak, woke films
Yeah.
that you have made, and I can say, why is this okay and why is this not okay?
Okay.
And that's where we are at, and we need to kind of view all of these films from the lens of, unfortunately, how they're going to be consumed by a society that anyway at this point of time believes that we are still a very patriarchal nation. We're still a nation that where a lot of there's gender conditioning, and a lot of men are being told that being alpha is actually the right way of being, or being an ideal man really means being a bully sometimes, being an angry man sometimes, treating the women in your lives the way, any way that you possibly can. Andrew Tate is a huge hero for a lot of people, and not just outside in the world, also in India. So in a social context like that, should we be making films like this just to make a provocative point, just to showcase that, just to trigger people who want to see a certain kind of value system in the culture around us, not in the films? I think that's really the issue that we're dealing with over here.
In fact, it's this is a really important point. A lot of people might not know that, back in the day when we used to watch these old Hindi films and someone would die, there would be this soundtrack that would inform you as the audience, it's now time to feel sad. Ooh, I would go like that, right? So what Nikhil's pointing out is really important. The soundtrack informs you that this is something to celebrate. But going back to what he said, which is the director of the film Animal had said very clearly that, oh, you think this is violent after Kabir Singh. I will show you what a violent film really is. The next one's going to be super violent. Sucharita's with us. What's argued that that was in response to your review, where you said that Kabir Singh was really violent. Tell us what happened. Is this your fault, Sucharita? Did you bring this on?
Girl, look. I am not going to give myself itna matlab bhao, itna credit ki maine, please, that is a conversation that if someone wants to have in the comment section, by all means go ahead and have it. I would not in my wildest dreams have the freaking lack of self-awareness to be like, I am so influential. I have इतनी influential होती ना मैं अगर फे तो मैं इतनी अमीर होती लाइफ में और इतने सब्सक्राइबर्स होते मेरे चैनल पर, नहीं हुए इतनी influential. Having said that, जो मेरी रिव्यू है, जो मेरा क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस है और जो भी मेरी कमेंट्री है, anything, it could be my tweet, it could be my Instagram post, it could be my review on YouTube, any conversations that I'm having with journalists like yourself or other women, it is filmmakers are going out and saying that you should not look at a piece of art through your own morality. Don't impose your own morality on someone else's piece of art. You always impose your own morality on art. Yeah, it could be any format of art. It could be a painting. A painting will move you because of what is inside you, not just because what is in the on the canvas. A song will move you because of what it touches inside you. Similarly, a film will activate your emotion because of what is already inside you. So what I have spoken about the film is what is already inside me. Violence is one thing, but who is the violence being committed upon? And are those acts of violence being justified as heroic, or are they being shown to show the craft of action choreography is not a problem. Action choreography is great. It's a very skillful thing for a filmmaker and stunt coordinators to achieve on screen. But it's the larger picture of it. When you look at it as a painting, when you take 5 steps back, when you sit in that museum and you spend time looking at it, what it evokes within you, what it evokes within me is a very feminist response, because that's just who I am as a person, and that's who all of us should be. But like Nikhil was also saying a couple of minutes back, it is not about ki kisi ne kaise bana diya, how dare he make something like that, or how dare she say what she said. It's about and cinema is so complex. It is such a complex art form because it's got visuals, it's got audio, it's got edit, it's got music, it's got dance, it's got action. So all the other art forms are encompassed in one single frame, and every second is 24 frames. We need to have more conversations around what it means. Like more critical conversations around cinema in general are required in our country, I think.
Taking this back to Sanjay Hegde is to leave in a bit. Mr. Hegde, there's the legal framework also, and there is the moral responsibility, because, Bollywood makes what is effectively, can we say, a mirror to society. And so when we're making films where it shows a young person walking into a school with a gun, is there a risk in your mind, that we might be encouraging gun violence because we're looking across the world at another country, at the US, for example, where gun violence in school is a real problem? Should there be, in your opinion, a sort of moral responsibility on filmmakers to say, hey, is that something I should be doing? Should I be encouraging that?
Well, then if they are filmmakers, they are not moralists, they are not religious leaders. So each one comes with his own set of morals. You may make a very violent film and yet have the moral of the film could very well be that violence doesn't work. Do they owe a responsibility? Well, I think that too is a slippery slope. Because
okay, let me push this. Let me push the legal argument a little better. I always do when I'm talking to you. The courts have also at the same time argued that Bollywood superstars who endorse products, also people on Instagram who are influencers who endorse products, should be held to some extent responsible for the quality of what they're endorsing. They can't just do it with impunity, which is, hey, I'm not really manufacturing it, I'm just endorsing it, and so they get in and out. And that's one argument as well. Does that level of influence then translate also to the films that they're making?
Well, that is a tricky question. Let me put it this way. When you endorse or influence somebody else's product, then in a sense, you are taking a certain ownership of it. But when you are putting your own work out for the world to judge, you're essentially saying, judge me. This is not a message. This is my particular vision of the way that I tell this story. I have submitted, supposing I'm an author, for instance, forget films. I write a very, very violent book. Now, as long as it does not fall within an incitement to violence or any of the other prohibited sections, I'm still able to, I should be able to publish that book. So when somebody submits his film, his book, or maybe even a painting for the judgment of the public, he or she does not tell the public that, look, you have to follow it.
Mm.
This is a vision that I'm communicating. You use your own judgment on it. I think that's where I join issue with Sucharita on the gaze part of it. There are people with all kinds of gazes, and when you are submitting your art and your point of view to the public, say that this is my gaze. I know that some of you are going to hate it, and that's what the director said. You may hate it, you may get triggered, but this is within the law. This is my point of view. If you like it and you pay to come into the movie theater and endorse it, so be it. If you don't like it, but you still come to the movie theater to think about it, so be it. My duty is to say that such a vision is possible, and that is the vision that I'm communicating. I don't think that there is a further responsibility legally for any particular causality.
Sucharita, do you want to respond to that? That everyone has a gaze and everyone's free to put that gaze out as
Yeah,
they see.
absolutely. Everybody has a gaze. Everybody will put their gaze out, because if you're the what product you're creating, any art form it could be, if it doesn't have your gaze, then what is it? You're not manufacturing it in a factory. Every song, every poem, every limerick, every film, it comes from a human person, from a human point of view, from their own lens on humanity. So gaze to hoega hi hoega. Obviously, zahir si baat hai. Legality is not something that I would debate at all. Like, it can't be illegal to make films again, because like Taneja was saying, Nikhil was saying a few minutes ago, if you already, there's also so much legality that gets involved when filmmakers try to express their creative vision through their craft. इस पे FIR हो गया, या उस पे केस हो गया, या इसको पाकिस्तान आर्टिस्ट को ले लिया तो हम फिल्म को ही बैन कर देंगे, फलाना ढिमकाना, उस जोन में तो हम जा ही नहीं सकते हैं. गेज तो होगा सबका. And like Mr. Hegde was also just saying, it's like an advertisement, isn't it? What are actors doing? Actors are marketing the film. Actors are agreeing to be a part of the film. Actors are agreeing to the message of the film. That's why they're participating in the film. When big movie stars say that or big sports people say that we're not going to endorse sugary soda drinks because they are not good for your body, and it's not something that we actively drink or consume in our real lives, we will not endorse it. It's similar, isn't it? Actors are also endorsing value proposition of the or the values of the film that they are participants in. They cannot be separated from the film, saying this is someone else's vision, not mine. I'm just acting.
Can I just make one distinction there?
Yes.
See, when a sports person endorses a fizzy drink or a pan parag or something like that, then that is a product which somebody else has made, which has been tested by the market, or you know about and then you are endorsing it despite everything. Often when a film actor signs a project, he starts off with a script. He sees a character that he has to enact, but the ultimate vision as to how it comes out, the gaze, there is very little kind of control that the actors themselves have. The responsibility as such it would be more likely to be that of the producer as well as the director. Very often, listen, I as a lawyer, I get a brief last minute all that I'd look at is what is the best possible argument that I can make, or what is the best possible performance I can give. I am not necessarily endorsing uh, the character of the client.
No, but Mr. Hegde,
I, I yes.
I do want to disagree with you on that point. I mean, films tend to be now 3-4 year projects, and especially the lead male, actor on the film has a tremendous amount of agency on how he's portrayed, what he looks like, what he says, and what that character builds in. If I'm not mistaken, so Charita, do you want to rebut on any of those points?
Yeah. It's again, a film is not a new flavor that you be like, I don't know how this flavor tastes. Films have flavors, and those flavors are tried and tested, and since time immemorial. Because at the end of the day, films are human stories, and every actor who is getting a script to say that they don't understand how this script is portraying their character is to infantilize the actors and take away the responsibility from them. So I would disagree with that politely.
So you would understand. See, listen, you would understand the character, but how would the entire story gel together? It's very unlikely. I mean, Amjad Khan as Gabbar Singh. Let's take it. We would be a different Gabbar Singh from what Danny Denzongpa, who was originally slated for that character, would have been. He may put in what he has, but would he endorse? Would he have had agency over how the ultimate product came over? Sholay itself had two separate endings. There was one ending which didn't work, and an ending which then got changed.
Interrupting you, but I do believe that us zamane ka Bollywood and this zamane ka Bollywood is completely different. Actors get final sign off, if I'm not mistaken, on almost everything, especially the male actors. But anyone who wants to, Pops, do you want to take that? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean the comparisons were slightly different between actors working in a film versus models or the celebrities who are endorsing products, correct? And I mean, one comparison I totally agree with Sanjay, is you very well know and what the product is, and if it is legally allowed to be sold and marketed, there is no legal issues, you sign, correct? And then if you the trouble comes if you don't understand the legalities of it, and then you flaunt, and then you put something without a thing saying that you are endorsing, without people knowing that you as a celebrity, paid celebrity, endorsing it. That's where you are going to mislead the people. And advertising, a lot of this influencer advertising will fall into that, misleading people as if you personally are endorsing while you are taking money to say the product is good. So therefore, that's a different comparison. As far as films are concerned, everyone knows that where the film is headed, what kind of film will be made. At least the lead actors, extras will not know too much about how the film is going to be treated. And nobody takes away from the legality or the right of a director or a writer, a story writer, or an actor to express himself freely in that particular role. If it is a guy who's differently wild, and then you are portraying his life, and he will do all the wild things because he's differently wild. Where it gets affected is if the viewer does not know that he is not a normal human being, he is differently wired, he's a psychopath. So as long as people get to know that what the plot is, then they will take the right moral out of that. That is one part.
Yeah,
Most of the film, at the end of the film, you will know that is a villain or is a hero, or what he is done is good or bad. The second part is, legally there is absolutely nothing. You cannot ask anybody to stop expressing themselves. But there is something called morality, which you put filters. As creative people, we always put that filter, because when you are starting with an idea, you know how realistically you want to make, how authentically you wanted to make, how hyperbolic you can make, and then can you want to take it to a sexist level. by taking the male protagonist in a certain way. So all the options are available in your head before writing a script. You exercise which one is correct, um, to your own conscious. We in advertising, we do what is right for the brand. Here we have to exercise what is right to my own conscious. What is the kind of story which I want to tell people, and then influence people with my stories. So that is where the filter need to be applied by creative people themselves. Nobody can force or enforce them to have that filter later, or to crucify them. And then that is the only thing, as a creative person who have
Okay,
been in
so
the industry for
speaking
45 years.
of creative people, Pops, I want to, there's a clip of an interview that Amir Khan gave many years ago that is now doing the rounds, in which he has effectively said that he believes that using either violence or sex extensively in a film indicates to a lack of talent and creativity on the part of director, because these are the two base emotions. It's very easy to use that, but to use like complex emotional ideas, to build complex characters is far more difficult. And it's when someone lacks creativity that they resort to using violence and sex to sort of promote their film.
Absolutely.
And I
These are all cliches and low hanging fruits which you resort to. All the films, all the stories are based on either hyperbolic or a conflict. What is the conflict which is happening? How do I resolve it? Your intelligence lies in picking the resolution. How are you going to resolve? That is where this entire thing, whether you take
Yeah,
humor,
I want to bring
or
Nikhil to
avoidance
this
or something.
first. I understand Mr. Hegde has to leave. Mr. Hegde, do you want to just quickly make a closing point before you go?
The closing point is that the law recognizes that it has limitations.
Hmm.
And if it is within the law, you cannot necessarily apply the same moral standard to everyone. People have different morals. As long as you do not seek to forcibly uh, impose your morals on anybody else, or uh, you know somehow manipulate their morals, I think people, uh, you should allow people their full say. Thank you very much, Faye, for having me.
Thank you, Mr.
I'll,
Hegde, for joining. Let
sorry, I
me
can't.
Yes, I wish you could stay longer. I just want to point out, Sucharita made a really interesting sort of analogy where she talked about sports people not endorsing fizzy drinks, right? So again, there's a very popular video of the footballer Ronaldo sort of moving all the fizzy drinks away from him in a press conference, and finally he put a bottle of water and he said, "Drink water." The interesting thing about this is there's nothing illegal with endorsing fizzy drinks. And if someone chooses to do so, they're fully within their legal rights to do so. It's the moral stand of whether or not that's a good thing and whether or not that's the message you want to send out. And so everyone associated with a film like this is choosing actively to be part of that film. Nikhil, responding to the Amir Khan statement, if this is the lowest hanging fruit, Pops also agreed that people. So are we saying then that the 60 crore rupee sort of opening, is that the correct number? That this massive opening,
Probably bigger than that.
probably bigger than that. Let me tell you, apparently for an A-rated film, this was the largest opening ever. It was Ranbir Kapoor's largest opening ever, 61 crore on the first day. Second biggest opening of the year after Pathan. Biggest for the director, Sandeep Reddy Vanga. Biggest non-festive opener. So it's done really well because of this low-hanging fruit, Nikhil.
Again, I mean, I don't know if this is honestly a low hanging fruit, because Amir himself did Ghajini and he obviously made this statement much before that.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you
And
look at
also, so will Amir make that statement now, as
yeah,
the industry
exactly.
stands
Yeah,
today, as his relationships and
correct,
all our relationship with cinema stands today, where
correct.
he's announced a film with Sunny Deol right after Gadar 2? Will he make that statement now?
Yeah, and absolutely. And the thing is that if you look at, also, I mean, I don't want to again give my judgment on Sandeep Vanga Reddy's art, but at least from the films that I've seen, whether it is Kill Bill or whether it is The Raid, Over there the violence was craft, it wasn't, and it was art, it was both, and it served a purpose. There was a story, there was an emotional truth to it, and you can't look at that and say that that is low hanging fruit, right? Even movies about sex, lies and videotape, as an example, by Soderbergh, is one of the best independent films that was made in the 90s. And all of them have a purpose for existence. And again, I think in the mind of the director of this film, there is a purpose for this film to exist. And within that film and within that universe, are the people violent? Yes. The context of these people are violent? Yes. And again, even when you look at individual scenes, like someone mentioned that, I think Such only mentioned that there was a, I don't know who mentioned, but there was a gun that was taken in a school. Now, of course, there are films about school shootings. There's a film called We Must Talk About Kevin, and there was a film called The Dirties, which is about school shootings, and which showed again these kids going and doing this violence. But there was a justification and a purpose, and the purpose was to horrify you at how wrong this is. My problem again with films like this, and I saw Kabir Singh ultimately because I wanted to be part of, at least wanted to have an opinion, before I give out an opinion, and I possibly might watch Animal also for research purposes. But even in Kabir Singh, right? Like the first time when Shahid and his character Kabir comes into a college and puts his hand on a woman and says, she's mine, and to another guy who wants her, and there is a very cool banging soundtrack to it. And that the point of this is that this is a cool thing to do. And the moment you're kind of trying to make everything look like a cool thing, because that is the moral stance that you're taking, that's the problem. The fact that there is, today someone put out a thread that even when films like Dar had come out at that point, and this is after Shah Rukh himself has said that it is, he was a villain, he did wrong things, he got justified ending, he died. Sunny Deol was the bigger hero. In fact, Shah Rukh's one of his clip has gone viral saying that, when I play a bad guy, people somehow I make him likable somehow. So I have to be very careful when I do bad guys, and which is why when I play bad guys, I don't disrespect women, because I don't want men to look at me and feel like this is a likable thing to do. But most other actors don't think like this and don't have these moral standards when it comes to films, because they're looking for the best part that they can get, and within that best part, if they get to do terrible things, and that evoke reactions, they will do it. So of course Ranbir has agency, of course Ashmika has agency, and while the actresses in that film might have lesser agency than a Ranbir, they've all chosen, but they recognize that this film is going to make that 61 crore opening, because this is what unfortunately the audience wants. And the reason they want it is because they genuinely believe that these kind of alpha men are cool. And that's what we are having a discourse on, that they are not actually cool. This is just a movie. Faye, you're on mute.
I have a dog and a child. Okay, I have to mute myself for a second. So I want to push this conversation a little further away from the director's responsibility to the mirror that Bollywood shows our society. Are we now a society? And I want to also, I believe that we've gotten to this point where we're watching a film like Animal, where someone's making a film like Animal, because it's responding to the environment. Like, animals evolve based on the environment that they're in, the demands of that environment, right? And I believe that this is the case as well. Let's consider the kind of content that gets put up on YouTube, the kind of things that get said about women, the kind of things that get written about women in the comment section. The sort of world we live in, where the man who sits in his car and gives gullies on video is an influencer with a huge following. This sort of like gym sort of testosterone driven idea of a man, the going back to the traditional idea of a man, pushing past this sort of woke feminist nonsense that you expect us to soften up, you expect us to do garga kaam, you expect us to the house is rubbish. Men are always meant to be this, and you were always meant to be that. And there's a massive pushback, and this pushback is not necessarily only male. There's pushback coming from women as well. Is this a reflection of that pushback in our society right now?
It is, it is at one point in time to be metrosexual, to be nice, and then to really respond to things in a modern progressive way. And then today men are threatened. Men are threatened at the very basic level. Correct? They are seeing women are their bosses. They are seeing women, behaving more than equals. And then suddenly, if you see not just this film, last 5 years, you see the list of films which have made it big from south, north, wherever it is. Leo, Pushpa, Vikram, KGF, RRR, Jailer, Jawan, Rana, Gaddar 2, and Bhagwant Singh Kesari. You look at all these films. What are the reflection of the society? I mean, either you can mirror the society or you can influence the society. The choice is yours. And then today's filmmakers and storytellers are choosing the path of I'll mirror the society, and mirror is realistic, is authentic, based on facts, because you are only showing the mirror. But in this case, they are not showing mirroring the society. They are actually creating a hyperbolic story, of one little aspect of something, and then making a story out of it. I mean, while we can argue and then say that creative people must have the freedom to express the way they wanted to express, tell the stories, and most of these stories are relevant to that era, and then may not be relevant retrospective to a generation. Correct? It may not be. But having said all that, somewhere, for the sake of wanting to be different, wanting to be original, if people will start to think about how long this Me Too will continue, of this action, and then cruelty, crudity, raw metrosexual, I mean raw alpha male behavior in the society, and then killing people. A hero fights, uh, because somebody kills his father, he will go and then kill 5,000 people in the movie, if you keep a head count of that. Correct? So that's fine. So it's fine to take revenge of one killing to 5,000 people, killing in that. So all these are hyperbolic things, which are not really mirroring the society. If you were to mirror revenge, and then you go to some extent to really make that happen, and then you struggle and then do that, if you have seen Mom, it has a beautiful storyline, and it does, it's a fiction, but it does create that tension in the storytelling and also the characters. But this has gone little overboard, is my opinion, while I am no judge of somebody else's work. If I don't like, I don't see. But by and large, people who create content must keep a filter of their own consciousness in what they are creating.
I just want to bring up in this conversation Andrew Tate, right? There was research done about the fact that, and for those of our audience who don't know, Andrew Tate is a sort of online content creator who puts out really misogynistic, sort of alpha male ideas, and is watched by very, very young boys. And there was research that came out that said that the young boys who happen to follow him and watch him on the internet also share his misogynistic ideas, and in their sort of treatment of the girls their age is very different and is informed by those videos that they watch. And I just want to spend a minute talking about it. And for people in the comment section, we'll read out some of the comments. Sanjay Hegde was here. We've all agreed and established that freedom of speech is paramount, and nothing really legally is wrong with the film Animal. We're discussing its impact on society, or we're discussing society's impact that has led to a film like Animal. So, Charita, the Andrew Tate question of that kind of content going up on a regular basis, give me the long answer. This kind of content going up on a regular basis on the internet, leading also, and like Pops pointed out, the film like RRR, which glorified a fictional freedom fighting movement, which was fully violent, and our freedom movement was non-violent in characteristic, but we're sort of imagining a different India right now. What's your response to that?
Look at where RRR went. Look at how much it traveled. Look at what it did for not just SS Rajamouli, but the actors, the music. It won an Oscar. Comparison to that, because I was very heavily trolled for that review as well. Whatever, you're used to that kind of stuff. You're a woman's I was speaking opinion on the internet. Hello, good morning. But compared to what that film, the impact of that film and the number of people it reaches and the number of masses it reaches, compared to a channel that is just about hit 100,000 subscribers, it's not comparable. So you putting everything together, it's not all content. It is somebody's making a film, somebody's making a YouTube video, somebody's making regular Instagram reels. Everything has its own life, everything has its own reach, everything goes to different places. But that doesn't mean, that's also a feedback that people keep giving in my comment section, is if you don't like it, don't watch it. Why did you go to watch the film if you're not going to like it? No, if somebody is treating you badly, you're going to say something. You're not going to look the other way. It's not personally treating me badly, but you know what I'm saying. If something bothers you, you say something. You use your right of whatever freedom of speech in that scenario. एंड्रू टेट के कितने फैंस हैं यार. वही आप एक बार मेरे कमेंट सेक्शन में चले जाओ. आप इस बार इस लाइव के कमेंट सेक्शन में चले जाओ. मैं पढ़ रही हूँ साइड में साइमल्टेनियसली लोग क्या बोल रहे हैं, फे को गालियां दे रहे हैं. एक बंदा मेरे को कह रहा है कि शक्लें मत बना. Somebody saying don't make faces. How disrespectful. Imagine live, or the impunity with which men on the internet operate. Don't make faces. Somebody you're telling, I'm sitting on a freaking news panel with freaking Faye D'Souza and somebody's telling me don't make faces live to my face. So, Andrew Tate knows who he's making these videos for. Sandeep knows who his film is for. They are not like silly, gullible, innocent. None of us are silly, gullible, and innocent. We know what the films are for. We know what they are saying. And then that's why what we have to say is also has to be that much calculated. Faye, why you and I are running our things on YouTube, on our own channel. We have platformed ourselves. Who's platforming us? Our voice, our dissent, our pushback to the Andrew Tates of the world? No one. We're doing it on our own. It's the absolute least, as cultural commentators, as women who feel like we have a voice and the vocabulary and the words in whatever language we choose to put that opinion out.
Yeah.
I cannot rest if I don't do it. एंड्रू टेट करे, मुझे इतने सारे फॉलोअर्स हैं, मैं कुछ तो करूं, कुछ तो बोलूं मैं. I can't look the other way. Nonsense.
So while Andrew Tate, for better or for worse, has the ability and the legal right to put out his opinion, so does Sucharita Tyagi. It's and in the universe where they both exist. But Nikhil, and an understanding of what messaging is going out from a film like Animal. And we talked about this. I remember when Vikram Singh came out, Kabir Singh, I'm sorry, came out as to what message that sends out. This sends out a far clearer message to young boys who are in high school right now, who are going to be like, "Arey, wo film dekha." This is what in your mind is that message that's gone out right now, and how much pressure are these boys going to be under to sort of portray that same, that same sort of masculine energy?
Yeah, I think when we spoke about low-hanging fruits, right? I think we were talking about violence and sex, and I think provoking the society into a certain kind of alpha behavior, a certain kind of chest-thumping, angry, bully behavior is the easiest thing to do. Actually, it's far more difficult, and that's where films like those are tougher to make, and they get made very less, because it's far more difficult to evoke empathy. It is far more difficult to evoke tears or humanity from cinema, but it is far easier to evoke provocation or anger or irritability or misogyny, because those are emotions which actually don't, those are base emotions. They don't really take as much effort, and the unfortunate thing is that because most filmmakers want to obviously also make money, because this is a business. We keep calling it art, but ultimately there is commerce involved, and most producers and directors are always looking at the easy way out to make that kind of money versus taking the tougher route and saying something that is the truth. And again, I'm not saying that this is not Sandeep Reddy's truth. In fact, it very much must be, and that is also a very tricky thing to talk about. But yeah, I think it's a very if we don't take responsibility as filmmakers, as artists, for the art that we are putting out into the world, then what are we doing with our lives? I feel, honestly, like I feel like if you have not studied science and not studied commerce and fought with your parents to get into the film industry, to get into the media industry, to call yourself an artist, to write an original story, to put your truth out into the world, if you're doing all of that ultimately to provoke someone and show a middle finger to someone and say, oh, you got triggered because I showed one woman slapping, here I'll show another woman licking somebody's boot, now you tell me what are you going to say to me? I mean, when you're doing it for those reasons, that's the problem, I feel, with films like this. And again, I'm not at all saying that Sandeep Reddy should not be allowed to make the film that he wants to make it. But I'm saying that it's very easy for filmmakers like that to point out fingers at everybody else and say, oh, you got offended. But then when we as a response talk about the fact that the reason this is wrong, or the reason it is distasteful according to us, is this, and not in the context of the character, but in the context of what it is representing to the society at large, then they also get offended, right? Like, then who is getting triggered? You're also getting triggered, and but when you get offended, then your army of supporters then latch on to us, get angry at us, call us names, especially women, and that's the unfortunate truth to it, right? Most women who are reviewing this film are being called, you look at, I mean, Sucharita, who has always taken feminist stances. I'm saying even a senior, journalist today, and I've just been seeing their comment sections. It's all just crass stuff. And when you make films like that, you kind of almost give a free pass to people to be like, well, this guy acted like an animal, so it is probably okay for you to as well. But it's not. And those are the things that, if at any point of time, as an example, and I'll just finish this one point, Faye, if at any point of time, Sandeep, Ranveer, or anybody associated with the film would go out and actually say, folks, this is just a film. This is being made only for entertainment. This is about an animal. This is about a character who behaves like an animal. This is not real life. Don't take it seriously. Don't. We're not endorsing the thing that happens in this film. We are just made it for entertainment. Even if they say base level things like that, I think at least there should be some sincerity to what they're trying to create. But over here, that's not the case. It's almost, in fact, the opposite, where it is being said that so what? Like, this exists, and
But rebuttal
yeah.
to that last point, Nikhil, actors and filmmakers and writers should not have to go out and justify their films once the films are
No,
out.
no,
What
fair
they are
enough, fair
saying,
enough. Yeah.
you shouldn't expect, we can't expect this from anyone to be like, no, I let me justify my movie. This is my movie. You make of it what you will.
No,
You have
I
already
mean,
justified your film. The
no,
fact
so
that it's out there, it's been made
yeah,
for years and years, it's justified.
correct. And I mean it purely on the sense of your accountability and what you are. What is the lens, like you said? If your lens actually and your intent actually is not to create something that is just provocative for the sake of it, and that is
Yeah.
just misogynistic for the sake of it, you will at least say that out. That we have created a bad character. Like, everyone, some people are putting threats about Scorsese and Taxi Driver. Scorsese, for has created Killers of the Flower Moon. He's the one who actually stands up and says, here's what's wrong with society. He's been doing that repeatedly over the years. He speaks about it all his
Yeah.
interviews. He speaks about taking accountability for us creating a society where terrible things happen, where terrible characters exist, and then also explains why they deserve the end that they deserve, because
Because
we are
the
seeing them.
comments that we get on our reviews, especially female film critics, are the idea is to shove us off the internet, to get us to shut up, to not have these
Yeah.
ideas, to not express these opinions. Who is responsible for that? Who is responsible for hundreds and thousands of people working together to silence dissenting opinion? That is the responsibility a film must take.
So
Absolutely,
I want to
absolutely.
bring in a different angle, right? And Pops, I know you have something to say, and you can respond to this.
Yeah,
There
I
was
think
recently a
at the
film.
end of the day,
Yes.
if you give things to young people, they will take it. Correct? They are at a rebellious place, and then they want all the males in the country of that age wanted to be like that. It is like asking children that do you want chocolates, and then you give them free chocolates as much as you want, and then they will lap it up, they'll eat it. They will not know the repercussion of eating so many chocolates. Somewhere the mother guides them. Society is also like that, correct? And then the people who are influencers need to have, of course, you give violent films, you give sexist films, you put 12 rapes in a film, and then people will go and then watch it. It will
I
become
am
a
mother.
blockbuster. Correct? It will become a blockbuster. It will not 300 crores, 700 crores, it will correct. But what yardstick are we really uh, uh, judging those films are? So it is not the money which they make, it is not the impact which you are making, and what kind of impact are you making. And then
Yeah.
you, as an individual, as an influencer, as a writer, and as whatever you are as an individual, what impact are you making on people? Is it the impact which you want, or you want some other impact? You can you can exaggerate things to make a point, but you can't shy away from that exaggeration. And then finally, what is the moral which people get? It's okay to go and then kill people.
Yeah.
It's okay to fight with your father
Let me
and
another thing before this panel, right? Recently, there was a film called Thank You for Coming that was made, Bhumi Pednekar, Rhea Kapoor. It was about a young woman not having achieved an orgasm and then trying many ways and many partners in order to do so. Now, when the film came out, and this is besides the point of whether it was a good film or a bad film, when the film did come out, there were many reviewers on YouTube who were basically saying, "Ye kya baat hui?" Like, how can you teach young girls in the country that they should be going out and having, multiple partners, and they should be looking for orgasms, and they should be, because you're influencing young people, and this is the message you're sending out, that this kind of, this is the kind of behavior that young women should indulge in. How is that different from the argument you all are making right now?
मैं तो कह रही हूँ अनिल कपूर का सही है दोनों पिक्चरों में वेरी गुड
No, I think you should leave it to individuals and their consciousness. Nothing you can do about it. It's the kind of film I want to make, I'll make. The kind of film you want to watch, you go and then watch. Nobody else can judge, and nobody can actually add. Intelligence lies in people who are at the power to use the power, misuse the power, and then guide the power in a different direction. At the end of the day, what do you want to be known for? Correct.
I think it
When
also
you
comes
end your
down.
course, there is something which your conscience tell you, that is it worth living, the life which you have, or you're not. That is what determines your own morality. Correct.
So I want to stop here because there's someone called Viewer's Choice in our comment section, Sucharita, who wants to know why you and I are not in the kitchen.
अब एक्चुअली बिकॉज अभी 10:30 बज गए मेरा इंटरमिटेंट फास्टिंग चल रहा है आई एम गोइंग टू द किचन आई एम गोइंग टू मेक माय सेल्फ सम ब्रेकफास्ट
So am
Okay,
I.
I have a different response for Viewer's Choice, and it is this: because my place is not in the kitchen. And our place has not been in the kitchen for many, many years, and it is unlikely that we're going to go back to the kitchen. Because we are here and we have opinions, and just like Sandeep Vanga, who can make a film like Animal, I have the ability to make this show. Sucharita has the ability to have an opinion on this show, and we can put it out on YouTube. If you don't like it, don't
Don't watch it.
watch. All right. So if you don't like our opinion, go away. It's not compulsory. You don't need to watch this. I will survive. My channel will survive quite well without it.
I am just from this whole conversation taking this one thing away. Mr. Sridhar just called film critics mothers, telling children don't eat chocolate. I am mother. I will take it. I will be your mother.
I think to add to Faye, the question that you asked about, thank you for coming. I think eventually this discourse is important, but we must be allowed to have this discourse. The issue with films like this is that they want to put a thunderous stop to any discourse that tries to raise a finger
Yeah.
against those films,
Yeah.
which is the problem in itself, right? Have that discourse. Let us allow all the opinions around this to exist and engage with those opinions as an artist. Don't engage with it from the lens of a troll. If there is something that you find problematic, either
Yeah.
talk about it and listen about it, and try to come to a place where both of you, everybody can actually get to a common place where you can understand why this was done. But we don't allow for that. Now, if you talk about Thank You for Coming as a film, of course women having agency in our country has not happened for a very, very, in the world hasn't happened for such a long time, that films that talk about women's agencies are far fewer and far more almost seen as inventive or innovative, versus
बट तो
films about
आयुष्मान
men.
खुराना ने 600 फिल्में कर दी इरेक्टाइल डिसफंक्शन के ऊपर कोई नहीं पूछता
Correct. And and films about men with guns have been as age old as cinema themselves, right? So now what is the evolution of those films? What are you doing different in a film about violence that has not been done thousand times before? And how are you showcasing a certain kind of understanding of the world around you when you showcase this violence on screen? I mean, I am not going to again judge or ask the producer or director of a film like that to do what they want to do. But as a filmmaker, if I'm going to write something, I'm going to ensure that there is a positive version of a world I want to showcase, because there is enough toxic representations that have already, that are already out there. And as Mr. Sridhar said, unfortunately, most people are not critically sitting back and looking at the nuances of why this was made or why this was not made, or whether or not this is an animalistic portrayal, or whether it is cool. If you're going to put a banging soundtrack when somebody is being murdered, they will think that this is cool. In our in and I mean, like, the irony that I always see when I go to theaters, when there's a smoking scene, you will have like smoking is injurious to health. But when somebody's being murdered with an axe, you won't have like killing people is injurious to health, or don't do it. That's not something that
Yeah.
we don't endorse as a society. That's okay. Bloodshed is okay. Sex is censored, but bloodshed and murders and misogyny is absolutely okay. There is never going to be a disclaimer around that. And I feel like we are those disclaimers then, and allow us to be those disclaimers. You choose to watch whatever film you want, but recognize that this film should not be an endorsement of society. Because
So,
if you think,
yeah,
yeah,
Nikhil,
if
I
you
want
think, last point
on
I'll
the,
say, if you think
yeah.
this is, then you should also look at Jawan and Pathan, and also talk how feminist those films are. In which where Shah Rukh Khan in both those films almost is led by actresses over there. In the first scene in Pathan, where Deepika is introduced, Shah Rukh is being saved by the woman, and he's completely cool with it. He's like, yeah, she's great at what she does. Who am I to bother her? And he just allows himself to be saved because he knows that she's great at her job, even though it doesn't matter what gender she is. In the same way as in Jawan, his army is of women. And if you're not looking and taking a thing, and if you're not looking at that and saying that is the society I want to create, then don't look at Animal and say this is the society I want to create. This is what an alpha is like. Both films have made blockbuster openings.
In fact, talking about two films that came out on the same day, on one side there was this film, there was Animal. On the same day, Sam Bahadur came out, which is about a real life sort of hero, or one could argue the real life alpha male,
Yeah.
who sort of talked back to his prime minister, an idea that would be difficult to digest in this moment, but she was a woman. And that film netted or grossed, I think, in the first day 6 crore, and this film did 60. And so it's very clear, which sort of alpha male, our society is leaning towards right now. I'm going to give the last word to Sucharita, because the woman should always have the last word.
Girl, देखो एक कुछ सालों पहले नेटफ्लिक्स पे एक फिल्म रिलीज हुई थी मैंक, राइट, वेयर गैरी ओल्डमैन प्लेज हर्मन मैंकोविट्स, द पर्सन हु रोट Citizen Kane. It's a historical about how that film came about and why the film is as important as it is now. और उस मूवी में एक सीन था where I think he is talking to the editor of the film or the producer of the film, and the person says to Mank that हम तो फिल्म बना रहे हैं ना, हम फिल्म बना रहे हैं, अपनी क्या रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. Mank says in return, थिएटर का दरवाजा जैसे बंद होता है, जो आई एम पैराफ्रेजिंग ऑब्वियसली, वो एक तो हिंदी में नहीं बोल रहा था, पर थिएटर का दरवाजा जैसे बंद होता है, जो बाहर है वो लोग बाहर छोड़ आए हैं. अंधेरे कमरे में अपनी सारी एजेंसी तुम्हें देकर जो बैठा है सीट पर, इतने बड़े पर्दे पे देख रहा है, लार्जर देन लाइफ पर्दे पे देख रहा है, इतने भगवान की जैसी इमेजेस उसको दिख रही हैं, द साइज ऑफ द पीपल इन फ्रंट ऑफ द स्क्रीन, उसके प्रति हमारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. वो वल्नरेबल है, उसका दिमाग हमारे लिए खुला है. व्हाट वी आर सेइंग, व्हाट वी आर डूइंग गोज स्ट्रेट टू दैट पर्सन, एंड दैट्स व्हाट वी आर रिस्पॉन्सिबल toward people sitting in that dark room. It's you put your own morality on reviewing a film, you put your own morality while you're watching the film, you also put your own morality while you're making the film, while you're writing the film. We are a free country. We will, as much as people are free to make the films that they want to make, we are also free to push back as much as we want to push back. And one must always.
Yeah.
If art is not calling truth to power, what is the point?
Yeah. I'm going to leave it there, but in closing, just to wrap this up for our audience, the conversation, we first established the fact, and I agree with it, that the director of the film Animal is fully within his rights to make whatever film he chooses. Our laws allow him to do so. There is a process in place which involves a censor board. The censor board has done its job in this case and given it an A rating and said children should not watch this film, it's too violent. So that process has also worked. Now, within that category, it has done really well. But there's nothing legally wrong with the film that is made. Do films influence young people, older people? Yes, they do. We tend to, especially in India, make heroes out of our film actors. We tend to sort of copy their hairstyles. We tend to copy their dialogues. A lot of people model their behavior on what they see in those films. And so there is a responsibility that comes with being that popular, but it's not a legally enforced responsibility. But that film exists, in my opinion, within a larger society that also involves schools, it also involves teachers, it involves parents, it involves larger society, different other kinds of content that's available on the internet or on television and in newspapers and in books that should collectively also inform this individual along with what they're seeing on the big screen. So while the makers of the film Animal are fully within their rights to put out a film that is arguably violent, misogynistic, and does so on purpose, and also glorifies that violence and misogyny, all of the rest of us are also within our rights to put out statements, reviews, opinions on that film of what we liked and we didn't like, to tell other people not to see it if we choose to do so, to protest in front of the film theater peacefully and say, don't watch this film, we think it's too violent. Everybody is within their rights to do so as long as the violence doesn't become a reality in the protest or in real life. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your freedom of speech. Enjoy it responsibly.